Good afternoon. I have the pleasure of attending the Munich acute leukemia meeting, and I wanted to just give an update on some of the recent data we published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology, looking at the development of a new salvage regimen for patients who relapse after an allogeneic transplant for acute myeloid leukemia. As allogeneic stem cell transplantation takes an ever more prominent role as definitive and curative modality in the treatment of fit adults with many forms of AML up to the age of 70, we are increasingly aware that the major cause of treatment failure is disease recurrence. And yet, for patients who relapse after an allograft for AML or MDS, there are currently really very few effective treatment options, and the outcome of patients who relapse post-transplant is extremely poor. Intensive chemotherapy has been used but is associated with excessive toxicity, and the CR rate is low. We have published with EBMT some data using azacitidine monotherapy, which is better tolerated, but again the CR rate's only around about 20%. So we have been interested in what strategies could be used potentially to augment a graft versus tumour effect in patients who have relapsed. And we're very interested in combining lenalidomide, which has significant anti-leukemic effect of itself, but it also activates T cells, with azacitidine. The previous experience using lenalidomide maintenance therapy post-transplant is that when it's delivered early post-transplant, there's a very high rate of severe graft versus host disease. And it was consequently really difficult to get approval for the study that we're reporting now, VIOLA, in which we did a dose-finding study combining AZA and lenalidomide. The concern was that using lenalidomide at any significant dose post-transplant would be associated with excessive toxicity. So we designed the trial using an innovative CRM model, which is a much more efficient way of delivering complex trials with regard to dose finding. And we were able to observe two things. Firstly, that when lenalidomide is combined with azacitidine, you can actually give high doses, up to 25 milligrams. Previously, only 5 or 10 has been utilized, and that was associated with excessive toxicity. We saw very low rates of GVHD, and this combination was well tolerated. And secondly, to our surprise, we observed quite a high CR rate, with CR rates of around about 50% in patients who'd relapsed post-allograft with this novel combination of AZA and len. So this looks like a really promising new treatment for patients with relapsed disease post-transplant, and it's a treatment I think is important to look at in different settings post-transplant. It might be very interesting using it in patients who are MRD positive but haven't yet relapsed. It might even be interesting to use it as a maintenance doublet. But more importantly, I think it now mandates examination of a randomized trial, which we have planned against current standard of care. So in short, it's really important now that we're focusing on improving outcomes after transplant. The most important thing is that we identify strategies to reduce the risk of disease recurrence. And one of the most important ways also will be in patients who have relapsed, to allow them to get into a second remission, which further curative therapy, whether it's donor lymphocyte infusion or a second transplant, can be delivered. The only way we were able to deliver this trial so quickly was through the UK Trials Acceleration Programme, and as Professor Lowenberg has said at this meeting already, we really now in 2019 need to be thinking about novel methods by which we expedite trials delivery and reforming the trials infrastructure so that patients can benefit from this tsunami of new drugs that looks so promising. The trials infrastructure we used in the 90s, when there was very little new agents and there was no genomics, is really now broken. It's not fit for purpose, and we need to think collectively within countries and across countries about how we improve our patients' outcomes as quickly as possible.